just way too much to unpack. But what I do want to do is at least cover some of the high points, what you all have been seeing this week, some of the big challenges and opportunities. Let's start, Dr. Adel, with you. Just quick introduction, some of the things you're working on, and one key thing you've learned from Davos this week.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. My name is Dr. Adel Siri. I'm a PhD in AI, machine learning, and trust networks. So it's amazing to see all the work that's being done in the field. I have 3 successful exits. One is a unicorn and a dozen in flight. One of the most amazing things that I've started seeing in regards of AI and healthcare, I was speaking on a panel a couple of days ago about generational health and wealth. And one key point that I'm taking from there is after this moment from a clinical studies, we had limited classification. So it's either like male, female, children, young, old, and that's it. But we are all built different. So that one size fits all healthcare model does not really work. The challenge we had before was that the data, the amount of work required to do specific custom work was immense. Now with the advent of AIs, it's much easier to do that one. So what I'm seeing here is customized clinical research that can take the data and analyze it for a custom group. Now couple that with the advances that are happening in blockchain and tokenization, where patients, us, can own our data and can be monetized for that data, allows those minority groups to actually contribute and benefit from contributing their data. So we have the 2 key components in the mix, a powerful AI that can do the analytics and supervision for patient groups to actually provide the data results in custom healthcare that's going to be delivered to you in time for an intervention to add life into your years, not years to your life.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot today. I think it's really fascinating to see, particularly the idea of precision medicine really becoming a reality. Mark?
I'm Mark Messow. I've been living in Switzerland for the last 20 years. I've been involved in the healthcare space, mostly from that drug development side, but also from the IoT side, exploring how to implement IoT devices in senior living environments and orchestrate solutions that can be early warning and preventive for seniors. I had also been involved in blockchain technology since 2015. And I think from participating in Davos this year, I see the evolution and the maturity of the technology at such a point where there's talk around institutional adoption, a realization that these technologies can be used for tokenizing data, as Dr. Adel just said. So now you have the federated pools of data that need to be brought together in a form that can be producing an orchestrated outcomes. Whether the orchestrated outcome is clinical development, the orchestrated outcome is emergency response or prevention protocols. Those orchestrated outcomes is the next frontier once the data has this ability to represent itself and to move. And so hence kind of why we're here with the value proposition of Vantiq and thinking about the next frontier of solutions design that requires this orchestrated orchestration thinking. Last kind of light comment is, I've met a lot of folks that kind of recognize that you can have the best discrete technology, but the new frontier of product design and development is going to shift towards the roles around orchestration and convergent systems engineering.
That's great. And Amir, you've got an interesting title and probably one a decade ago that didn't exist anywhere, but one that I think is going to be everywhere in the next decade. Tell us a little about yourself and one key takeaway from what you've learned this week.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Nice to meet everyone. I have a role which is called Chief Responsible AI Officer. This is a title that doesn't mean much, but it means 2 things. It means that you want to create frameworks to apply the responsible AI principles. Those principles are very applicable to the domain of healthcare and also financial services more than any other domains. These principles are not easy to deploy because right now we're moving at a very fast rate. of developing AI solutions, and the regulators that have to find some way of overseeing these implementations are not ready to. So there's basically a backlash of stronger regulation with the EU AI Act that basically wants to evaluate the risk of the systems. So my exposure to healthcare has been for many years. 25 years ago, I was designing medical devices, worked with hospitals, as the HIPAA compliance basically shape up. At Davos, what we discussed, I was not everywhere, but what we discussed was mostly about venture responsible AI. But what appears, the two topics are mostly agentic AI that has become a buzzword, which one has to understand what it means, but also trust. The concept of trust have been emerging a lot. Trust in AI, trust in systems, trust in applications. This social trust can go back to this mechanism of tokenizations and basically some form of ledgering, right, the flow of information. But in reality, we need to have systems that are aligned with humans and that can help humans augment their decision-making process. So we're not there right now. Right now, the focus is mostly on replacing humans and automating tasks.
Yep.
And the narrative, I think, what is missing at Davos, and you did ask that question, but heard enough, is that this complementarity of decision support, not human and AI, that's the different narrative, but decision support, especially in healthcare. I think we need more to.
Yeah, it's a great point. You made a comment about sort of the fast pace at which things are moving and almost the inability for regulators and the FDA, as example, to keep up with it. And from your perspective and sort of the work you do, how are you helping clients and customers think about this new paradigm? Because there's a need to adopt, yet there's a resistance and sort of a fear of the potential bad outcomes.
Well, the fear of regulation is definitely out there, but most companies don't care. Right? There's no standard and there's no punishment. So when you look at the legal, the commercial attorneys and companies, they say, well, if they give us some framework of some standards, we'll align with that, but there's nothing. So what do you want us to do? So we apply the guardrails that we have been given. We try to make the system more safe. We provide the right data provenance and governance, but what else can we do? So there's a little bit of that attitude from the profit-making companies, from NGOs and public service. There's a lot more attention given to these topics. Definitely not. Yep. So there is the two differences.
And Adele, you commented on the importance of the blockchain technology, but particularly the sense of trust and really the sense of sort of autonomy. Why does data autonomy, particularly in the era of AI, become so important for something like healthcare?
For several reasons. So one, AI feeds on two things, energy and data. I was just in the World AI Summit in Qatar, and basically the focus there was that we've reached the ceiling of the data. We clean on everything except for data that are in silos within enterprises and governments. Alternatively, they are trying to train on smaller sets for tuning up agents or doing the agentic swarming approach, where you have more orchestration layer and agents focus on a certain task that they can do better with less amount of data. So that leads us to the question of where is the data being produced? So it's either by humans, all of us, or by organizations. That data autonomy, that you are able of controlling your own data, becomes really important, because if you are not monetizing that, somebody else is doing this and you are not benefiting from it. And that's where blockchain comes into play, because you are able of monetizing the data on the blockchain and also providing immutable proof that you either used or did not use the data and sharing from it. And that gives me a segue to what Amir was saying, because that's focus of one of my projects, AIGP, is basically focusing on how do we know which of those projects using which data and creating an immutable track record of what they are seeing. Because you will notice that a lot of the AI projects out there change the story pretty frequently, and they don't have a track record behind them. So we need a system that allows them to be discovered and verified and certified somehow, so that we bring that trust into the system. And that's what I've been focusing on in AI.
Yeah, it's great. It's interesting. You think from the regulatory standpoint and also the trust standpoint to now sort of the data sovereignty and autonomy. These things are really starting to come together in a way. What I still am really looking for, because I think we'll all agree that we're seeing a lot of these applications, and Miri made this comment, really facing towards scratching the surface or chatbots that are helping you sell a product better. But Mark, how do we sort of take the next step? Now that these technologies are coming together, you're doing some work where we're actually more thinking about the provision of services around a type of technology where it's aging in place. It's not just about the technology, but it's about bringing all the services together, fueled by the coming together of AI, ledger technology, and other IoT for data.
A couple of different points that come to mind. One is there in any solution, you're going to have a number of different components, or what we call a stack. Could be hardware devices, or it could be different AI agents that work as part of that stack. And so I think the solutions architects of the future have to deeply understand what those elements are and how they work. And so we talk about training the AI, we talk about understanding deeply that how it's been designed and how it will respond. That has to be more transparent and brought to the surface in a way so the solution architect can really design a system that's predictable and fits a certain type of performance specification. In Adele's case, AI VP, I happen to know a little bit about that, but it serves an important function, which is how do you reward the inventor of these agents? And so everybody wants to sell value up front and say, buy my device, buy my software, and hopefully you get value in the future. But that's not what we see as the business model of the future. People want to pay for use and pay for value. And so if you're in a stack of technologies that is producing value for seniors, for example, you want to be able to monitor what's being used, what's bringing value, and then have a mechanism to be able to reward the inventors and the owners of that IP. So I think we're in a journey now in the stage of evolution where we need to understand how to architect these solutions. We have to have a little more transparency and knowledge of what actually went into the AI. And we need a kind of mechanism for performance-based rewards for all the participants in that solution stack.
Yeah. You made a comment earlier about the need for orchestration, and you just commented on sort of how individuals, particularly the developers of these solutions, are going to have to sort of think differently. We're also seeing this transition to more real time, and not just the idea that I interact real time, but that the systems are interacting real time. And it's not just AI alone. It's going to be the combination of the immense amount of productivity we'll see, or immense amount of production we'll see in new wearables, new sensors, right? There's going to be an overload of data and an already overload of data, right? And so, Amir, how do you see that a lot of the work that your company does sits at that intersection of really helping people to develop and implement these solutions? How do you see that transition for organizations to really move from their current state of thinking to what's going to be necessary to make real meaningful adoption of all this tech?
Naturally, the adoption is not going to be easy. It requires literacy and knowledge and training. So I see that in two steps. In steps where there's going to be some subcontracting and some teams taking ownership of some these deliverables and gradually transition into the know-how with the internal teams. Now, but the cost cutting that we need to observe in the future, I'm not sure business is going to afford to have all the teams developing internally. So there's going to be some form of maybe distributed network of collaboration. For instance, hospitals each have their own experts, right? Even insurance providers, they are. So I'm going to be pulling, like in automobile industry, some job research efforts, share some data for trials or not. I think that the future is not very sure because at the speed at which we are evolving, training is an issue. Skill building is an issue. It's not that people cannot learn, I'm not saying, but you need to fast track that and you skill very fast.
Yeah, it's an incredibly important point. How do you see the need for both training and education. Because for me, when I first heard of blockchain, I had no idea what it was. I didn't comprehend it. And it's taken a long time for me to go, aha, I get the importance of this technology. But we don't have 5 years to wait, because in the next 5 years, the advancements that are seeing today are only going to speed up. So how do we think about the incorporation of the practical applications of these technologies to get people more comfortable, and to your point, really not just to learn, but to be trained on how to use these effectively?
So 3 quick points that I want to make. One is we need to shift our thinking from cost cutting to opening up more of the pie in front of you. So a lot of the companies think, okay, I put AI, I fire half of my employees. That's not the case. But you can put AI and double your revenue coming in. That's a different thinking through. So don't think of a mentality of scarcity, think of mentality of abundance.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next point, that with any new technology, usually there is an incumbent inversion theory, which means that first the new technology is sitting on top of an incumbent and it's being fought a little bit there, and then it reverses and the incumbent is living on it. An example of that is telecom. So we used to have the internet going through dial-up phones and so forth, and they hated that. And then now you make your phones all on TCP/IP, but I doubt that anybody can explain what TCP/IP is to me. So we make the calls separately. So I see us leapfrogging that. Is kind of like if you ask youngsters about the dial phone, they don't even know what that is. They are using a cell phone right away and chats and so forth. So we are not going to get into that adoption to understand it. We're going to get adoption by utility, by usage of it. That's kind of like what I'm thinking here. And then I think that it's upon us to create that environment where we can show the people how those systems work together, orchestrate and operate together. What I'm working on in ARVP is by doing the rewards on a blockchain system. So because we as humans also are motivated by, that dopamine action, seeing numbers, seeing things that go up, and that helps the adoption.
Yeah. Use cases, right? Mark, we heard a couple of comments about sort of the need for collaboration. And I know you're a thinker of the importance of ecosystems as all of this sort of starts to continue to fly by. Why are ecosystems going to be so important? Is it because everyone's bringing a unique piece of the puzzle? Is it because we don't have in one place all the knowledge to build the systems? What is it that's going to drive sort of the success, and why are these ecosystems important?
I think you have highlighted 2 very good points. So the nature of data has fractional utility. And so the systems of the future, ecosystems by definition, have many stakeholders and many potential clients. And so companies struggle when they design a product. The first question they ask is, who's your client? But when you have an ecosystem, you have many clients, right? And there's reciprocal value that actually goes in both directions. So your client can also be your customer in the ecosystem. So designing and getting ecosystems to come alive, very challenging, especially for legacy companies. And so blockchain technology is opening up this ability to make fractional use of data. There's, as Adele said, there's new value creation possibilities and new business models. So, instantiating these and getting them to come alive, in my experience, requires a different governance model where parties can fuse their capability together. They have a common vision of what the ecosystem looks like, but infusing their capability together and sharing the risk and sharing the reward of the outcome that comes from that. This is a convergent systems design challenge. There's multi-stakeholders involved. There's new business models, and some of which are disruptive and some of which are incremental. My recommendation, as companies or people think about how to build these out in the future, is pick use cases that are not at the very edge of the challenge, right? Don't try and do something that replicates what a human can do, but just do something a little bit better than what's being done today. Don't pick a use case, which is, a mission critical, life or death type of situation. Pick something that can improve your quality of life a little bit more or be preventive in nature. If you go to the extreme use cases, you're at the edge of regulatory scrutiny. You have liability issues and a lot of challenges in getting these ecosystems to come alive.
Yeah.
But the fundamentals of what you start with, the way of thinking about solution architecture, how parties can co-create, how you can start to make fractional use of the data would be the same, but you just grow in the sophistication of your use case over time, starting with something simple.
Amazing points that 25 minutes went by very fast because you all are so enlightening. So I know we've got time limits. These individuals need to get to other events. I want to see if there's any questions in the audience as we have them here before we get final thoughts and words from anyone.
I have one. What would you guys think is the most or the largest payback for applications using AI in your field right now? In our field?
Yeah.
You mean in a domain?
Yeah.
Application? I don't have any, but I can keep my opinion.
Yeah.
The most rewarding in terms of who's building it?
Money, financially. Where's the biggest payback?
Anything home care, preventative care, financial services, logistics, heavily, manufacturing, anything that doesn't touch human, so it can basically have some form of protection with data privacy would probably go faster. And in the domain of data privacy, I think anything that has to do with last mind of health would has a huge potential. Because you don't have medical decisions, but you have to have prevention and help and support, which is today done by nurses and healthcare workers and assistants. And that AI could help a lot. There's a lot of money there.
Okay. Can you expand a little bit on the financial services? Where do you see the return?
For financial services, there is anything that has to do with risk analysis.
Okay.
With scoring, anything has to do with investment evaluation.
Okay.
Can be highly automated with a little bit of human oversight and expert oversight. You don't need to have like 25 analysts evaluating public placement or private placement. If you want to do portfolio management, that's easy. So these are observations. The domains are regulated, but the regulation is very, very clear. So as long as you don't make decisions about people, like lending, you're safe.
And where you see that AI is going to have a harder time replacing activities in the financial sector?
I think that you have to make decisions about areas that have multiple objectives, where you have basically either a game theory attached to it or some form of divergent objectives, where you have to deal with this and that at the same time, where you have to have human oversight and human judgment. As they are not trying to do that.
Thank you, sir. Mark, any thoughts?
So I have two thoughts there. So for example, from healthcare point of view, so in the US, we have those claims that go in. So you go to a hospital, you get a procedure done, and then the hospital, the provider has to submit a claim. And then that claim a few weeks later gets rejected and you lose more funds, figuring out why it has been rejected, and then reformatting that and sending it. And there are a forest of ICD-10s that you have to adhere to, and each insurance company has different sets of what they cover. So the way that you would file for it would differ based on each one of them. So it's a nightmare of complicated, regulators and such. So use of AI to be able of taking a claim and then forming it in the right way, assessing whether it will be rejected or not based on the insurance itself, and then filing it automatically, the use case of an actual agentic AI makes a lot of sense. It saves money for the provider. You get your money faster. Patient can get treated faster. Maybe the insurance companies will not be so happy about that, but so that's one really great use there. The other thing that I wanted to also mention is that if you ask me for what you're going to see next year in terms of AI proliferating out there, you're going to start reading a lot about the tribal part of the human experience. So you're gonna see entertainment, more of those AIs that speak with you, that entertains you, they give you company, that tells you jokes and all that stuff. And believe it or not, you find a lot of money in there, just like meme coins. So there is an actual case of that. There is an AI called Truth Terminal that someone created, started talking about self. Andrew Switz gave it $50,000. It created a coin and called it Cotis Maximus. And you'd think like, okay, who's gonna buy that? And it's like a couple $1 billion. So I mean, it's not doing anything beneficial. But humans are humans. That's what makes us special. Yes, our domain. So this piece, when you go there, I don't know it. Otherwise, I'll be billionaire. But so I'm sitting here with the rest of you guys.
Mark, any thoughts?
Well, I was going to ask, what do you guys think in terms of the AI applicability in healthcare is currently being oversold? Like, what are the things that you guys are hearing that people are, jumping to conclusions about that you're going, no, it's either not going to happen that way, or the regulatory challenges are going to be too great, or the technology is not there and not close to being there?
Any form of replacement human would not happen.
Yeah.
Either nurses or doctors or robots. It was not gonna happen. Unless we have very sentient robots that could do some support tasks for the final product. The empathy, the care that we have to provide, that thing is not going to use a robot to replace. Yes. I think that's not the full answer, but
yeah. But there might not, to Mark's point about incremental steps, it might not replace, but augmentation is of course a big part of the conversation now. How do you augment what they're doing in ways that support
augmentation would be the new norm, right?
Yeah.
It's a new learning, the new licenses, the new training. So you always keeping up.
But something funny from that, I have a friend who's a doctor, he's a brilliant doctor, and he tells me that's the only fault in the things. Being a doctor these days, it's only to follow protocols. And he's like a brilliant person, so it's kind of ironic, right? But I'd like to know, to a certain extent, that a lot of the work of the doctors of following protocols, given certain symptoms that come from an exam that's probably computerized, could be interpreted by a machine at some point. Certain aspects of some exams.
Yes, yes and no. One can imagine that machine can learn all the nuances of not just applying a protocol, but the condition of the patient or the situation, the economic situation, the mental state, the whole thing. But at the same time, we cannot reduce the health of a human being just to that. So you need some form of oversight about that.
So augmentation, like Dave was saying, right? Like
I don't call that augmentation. I talk human in the book. I talk about human ownership.
Exactly.
You need a human control. You need a person with a physical body that thinks, that takes ownership.
I can manage more patients than with AI.
But you can manage more patients. We can see more. We can evaluate more. We can learn more. We can gather more data. All of that is possible. Yeah. Some automation can be done, like you're sneezing. Okay, this is very simple sneezing, but sorry.
One of the biggest challenges in the industry is the legacy ISIT system. There's millions of variety, and then they are not quoting each other's. Once we start to implement the new technology to the one legacy IT system, that's always a failure. I have a very bad experience on the, let's say, application. So I wonder how we are going to make it synchronized, because I see some of you use cases, and they did use cases says some mobility application, some roadside assistant, for example. There are many actors are playing. How do you make them work in a cloud computing technology or before the AI? How do they make sure that it's a truly real time?
Two answers. One is that I don't think it's gonna happen anytime in the US. Anytime I go to a doctor, it's still like 5 forms I get by hand, and then the test again, and to come back for the result. So that's funny. The second answer, I think, patient data portability could solve that. The same way to have number portability, we have to have some form of patient ownership of the data and legislated portability. So systems have to align now with the portability standards. So therefore, they need to be interoperable now. But the key is patient portability, patient data portability. More, it's not systems.
But there was a number of questions. I mean, answering David's question.
All up to it.
Well, I think the dream of having a robots that do everything as a home assistant, I think that's far away. It can provide some siloed or some discrete value proposition, but not the kind of vast number of functions that it's being sold to today. It's got a while to go. To answer Marty's question, I do think that decentralized testing, decentralized trials, the technologies that are embedded inside that. To your point, the latency of going to a doctor to fill out a form, get a test, come back again to get a result. The technology is the technology is there, right? So it just needs to be deployed. And so the question we should ask ourselves is, what is stopping that from being adopted? Been a passion of mine, technology adoption, but clearly there's a value in adopting it. So to me, that's my where I think there's great potential for it.
So, my question is pretty quick. I think a lot of people have been speaking about what AI might not be useful for. Like, for example, it's not going to replace human care because ultimately it's human place on physician. But I was like wondering, in your view, like, what do you think is like the biggest application for AI in healthcare? Is it speeding up paperwork? Is it like diagnostics? Like, what's your view on that? You mentioned a little bit about adoption is something that you're looking at, but is there like a specific use case that you're really excited about? Apologies if you spoke about this before I arrived, because that was coming out rubber. You covered it. So let's get this video please.
Thank you. So actually, my name is Alexander. I work with AI in Germany, and my insight from Davos is that some people show me that so there are countries that don't have such strict data protection regulations or literacy regulations as we do, right? And with the low cost of building AI, those countries can adopt actually when healthcare and all these very difficult industries much faster. And they have extremely high incentive to do that because very often the healthcare over there is at not the highest level, right? And you cannot access a doctor. So what's your take on that? Do you think that we will be learning from developing countries and actually there will be so much pressure on our societies to adopt faster in this way?
It's a great question. So what you're referring to is the leapfrog effect. So basically, I was born in Egypt, and it took 6 months to get a phone into your house because you have to dig the street, all of the stuff. Today, you can get the same charge from the grocery store at 2 a.m. They'll sit and have a phone right away. And same thing when I arrived here, get another eSIM, put it in the phone, and you are done. So to your point, I think that once the new technologies start to proliferate, the smaller players will be able of adopting it, and there is no kind of like clear regulatory framework which will reflect on the big players as well. But what I want you, what I want you guys to think about, if we can leave you with something in the future, would be the following. I want you to think in the next 5 to 10 years that all of us would have a digital twin that carries all the information from our biology, and that it is being monitored and updated real life in it, so that I don't have to go to the physician and fill certificates of the phone like Amir was saying. It's already at the physician, and the physician is following me, and there are AIs that are looking at our status, not at our physical one, but our digital one, so that we can live better. And I want you also to think about one thing. Throughout history, we were inventing machines that extended our physical abilities. Jump in a car, jump in a plane, and you can do things that you could not do. AIs are allowing us to extend our cognitive abilities so that we can do things faster. It's not eliminating our creativity or our humanity. It's not replacing us. It's providing us with the tools like a knife. You could use it to cut butter or to inflict harm. So instead of fearing it or wondering about it, learn more about it, adopt it, and go boldly when no AI went before.
Some of the panelists need to get out of here, so really appreciate you all taking the time to come over here. Incredibly insightful thoughts, and again, thanks for joining us. So thanks.